Welcome to this week's Ask Charlie, and I am in the thick of marmalade making, and I think that this is the easiest way I have found to make marmalade. I have shared with you in the past another way to make marmalade. There's so many different ways, but I think this is the quickest and the easiest, so I thought I would do a revised video and share it with you. So I use the largest agar pan that they make to make my marmalade in. I have got my Seville oranges here weighed out. It's 1.5 kilos of Seville oranges into 3 litres of water. I've washed my oranges, I've given them a bit of a scrub, and I also use 2 lemons. The lemons are pretty crucial in the marmalade making process. So they've gone into the 3 litres of water. I have got my lid waiting by my agar for me. I'm going to pop the lid on, I'm going to bring this to the boil, and then I'm going to leave it to simmer for a good couple of hours. And I want those oranges to soften and be, softened, and then it's so much easier to slice them up and take the pith and pips out. So I'm going to pop this on the heat. This is a little bit like Blue Peter. This is one I made earlier. This is one that has boiled and simmered, and I've left it to cool. And so those are ready to be dealt with. So I will share with you the next step in marmalade making. So it's something, the Seville oranges are only available for a short amount of time, and you have to make hay when the sun shines. So when the Seville oranges are ready, it is Action Station's marmalade making in my kitchen. I've made marmalade for many years. I love making it. My husband loves it. I love using it in my Christmas cake recipes. I'm going to share a secret with you. I actually never used to like marmalade. I used to think it was utterly revolting. But since I've been making my own, no, it's probably the last couple of years, I have got a few recipes that I use marmalade in, like marmalade bread and butter pudding and a few other things. And I'm like, actually, it's not so bad. And now I'll often have marmalade on a slice of sourdough or something like that, and I actually rather enjoy it. So I am a converted marmalade lover. Hang that back up there. But yes, we're going to bring that one to the boil and then let it simmer for 2 hours until it gets to this stage like this. And now this is so much softer and so much easier to get the pith and pips out, but also to slice it up. I'm really old-fashioned, and I actually like to do it by hand. Simon's friend Clive has a marmalade shredder. He's busy using his marmalade shredder at the moment, and I've tried to find one, like a vintage one. They're a little bit like hen's teeth to find. I don't have one. And I have tried in the food processor, but I just don't like the way the shreds turn out. So I would rather sit there for 45 minutes to an hour shredding it by hand, because that's the kind of person I am. Maybe I do need to get a life, but I will put on a podcast or listen to an audiobook or sing along to the radio or whatever it might be. And actually I find it really therapeutic and really relaxing, and I love doing it. So that's what I do in January, and it's cold, it's miserable, and it's just lovely to be sat here in the kitchen, enjoying the process. So anyway, I'm going to wait for that to boil and then pop it into the simmering oven and leave it to do its thing, and we can prep this little lot. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm going to leave it because I need to whiz out and do the horses and that jazz, but I wanted to show you that first step and get that going. You can make marmalade over a couple of days, one batch of marmalade over a couple of days, or you can get it going first thing in the morning and by sort of late afternoon, early evening, you can be finishing it off, or you can prep it and stagger it out. It's quite forgiving. It will wait and just either leave the lid on or cover it with a tea towel, and just do it when it suits you and when it fits in with family life. But for now, the horses are calling, so I'm going to whiz off and do them and be back with you later. So it's a little bit later than I was hoping to start doing this. It has ended up being one of those days, but that's fine. That's where marmalade can wait. It just can't wait. And you have to do it when you start boiling it and make that commitment. But at this stage, it doesn't matter if it's a few hours later. Now I have got a Pyrex bowl, a very, very old muslin that I've used for jam making and marmalade making for years. So I'm just going to pop that over in my bowl here to one side, and I've got a spare bowl just in case I need it. I have a serrated knife. These are from Victorinox and I absolutely love them. They're the same, one's straight and one's serrated, just depends on what I need. And then I've got this spoon. I find this spoon, can you see? It's got this sort of serrated sort of edge. It's just decorative, but I find it pretty useful, and I'll show you why in a minute. So my oranges and lemons have cooled in the water. Girls, lie down. Tess is tottering around, bless her. She's still eating and she's still happy, so that's the main thing, but she's getting old. Right, I'm just going to move this to one side, and we're going to start with, in fact, let's move it there, and then it's not in the way and you can see exactly what I'm doing. I hope you can see exactly what I'm doing. I think I might move you a little closer. We'll move you there, and then hopefully that's a better bird's eye view. Right, the lemons, I just take the pith and pips out. I don't use the lemon rind. So using my spoon, I'm just going to scoop out as much of that as I possibly can into my muslin. And these have softened really nicely, so it's easy to do. I mean, that's just come out in one foul swoop. And we'll just make sure that all of that goes into our muslin. The lemons really help with flavour, but also they contain a high amount of pectin, which is going to help with the setting. Seville oranges have a lot of pectin in as well, so that's why we can use natural, not natural sugar, granulated sugar rather than a jam sugar. You don't need to use a jam sugar. There's a little bit of rind there that's just come off, so I'll take that out. You can just use regular granulated sugar for this, and actually it's far less expensive to use that too. So you can see that these have softened really, really beautifully, and it just makes it effortless to scoop all of that out like so. This, I think, this and cutting up the shreds are the most labour-intensive part of marmalade making, and so we want to make it as easy as possible. I'm going to put those into my bowl. Those can go on the compost, and I'm just going to literally do this with all of my halves and all of my oranges, and I just halve them up and then scoop it out, and then keep the orange rind, and that we will cut into shreds next. In fact, I'm going to show you how I do that right now, because then I can just crack on with the rest of it. So that's my bowl to discard. There's quite a bit of pith on there, so just slice that off and pop it into the bowl. And then and it cuts so effortlessly once it's softened, literally like that, cut it up. This is where you can use a marmalade shredder. You can use a food processor if you want. However, I prefer more uniform shreds, and it's because I'm cutting it in stripes, that's why I said it. So that's why I do it by hand. And when I have Clive's Marmalade shredder, I will bash out a few batches a little bit more quickly because I've got that. If there's any excess pith, pop that in the bowl with it and then just cut these shreds. And I want them into pieces about that kind of size. That's what I'm aiming for. That is how we like it. You don't want them to be too long because that's pretty annoying when you go to eat them. You want them just to be easy to eat. And the softer they are, I think the better. So that's why I like to do it this way. And I've definitely found this way far quicker and less labour intensive than the previous method that I have shared with you. It works well. It's just, this is just a little bit swifter. And we want swifter in life. So I'm just taking off that excess. Into there it goes. Make sure you keep all of the pips too. Pips and pith. That is exactly what we want. And then if you've got really good knife skills, then you'll rattle through these really quickly. My knife skills have always been terrible. I've never improved. I've possibly got worse as people have tried to teach me over the years. Some things that we're good at and other things we're not good at. And knife skills is something that I wouldn't say is one of my greatest attributes in life, but I get the job done and that's what's important. So I'm just going to crack on and do the same with all of these and I'll be back with you when I finished. Right, I have sliced up all of my oranges. The dogs think that it's all terribly exciting. They're all waiting for, they think, a tasty morsel, but they're not going to get one because there's nothing tasty here. So get your corners of your muslin together. Have a piece of string waiting in your hand. Now you want to make sure that it's securely tied. You don't want this little lot escaping. Well, I don't. I like to have clean marmalade. Again, it's personal preference, but I like to keep this lot separate. So just make sure that it's nice and tight. And then tie in a bow or not. I just do a bow. And then I've got my bowl here. Let's just bring it here. I'm going to actually pop my shreds in first. And there's some orange juice on my chopping board. And I've got this clever chopping board with a groove, so that captures the juice. So we'll just tip all of that carefully in and add in the shreds too. That's all in there. And now I'm going to add in my muslin and any juice that's gathered in here. Pop that all in to your pan. Making marmalade really is a labour of love. Pop the lid on your pan, bring this to the boil, and then let it simmer for an hour or two, and then I'll share with you the next step. It has been a busy night of marmalade making. I have got another batch on the go here, and this batch that I've just taken out. That is going there for a moment. And I've got a sieve, a pair of tongs, and I'm just going to hoik my muslin bag out and pop it there and leave it there overnight to cool. And tomorrow we will do the next part. And in the meantime, I have got my orange shreds in here, and I've got a muslin bag here that I just need to tie up with a piece of string. And then I've got another batch to do. that batch is going into there. And I might even just about have time to do this one tonight as well. I think let's do it. Let's lift that up. Let's pop that one on there. I've got a loaf of sourdough that I have made there, and that can go over there now. And I've got another loaf of sourdough. I need to move this out of the way. There we are. Let's move that out of the way. I've got a loaf of sourdough and a husband behind me. This marmalade, he's marmalade tasting. So excited. It's pretty damn good. One of Simon's great friends. And he makes marmalade, and he's very kindly loaning me his marmalade shredder because he's finished making his marmalade. I think he said he's made 22 jars. What did you just say about marmalade? About the love of marmalade in life?
Yes,
something like that.
I'm trying to remember.
Simple pleasure in life. It's good marmalade on a piece of toast for breakfast.
Marmalade is life.
Marmalade is life. Something like that. Anyway, it's very funny. And I will be back with you tomorrow, finishing off the marmalade. So all we need to do tomorrow is squeeze out that bag, add in the sugar, bring it to the boil, and then jar it. So the end is in sight. This is like the final stages of marmalade preparation. It's a lengthy process, but so worth it. Isn't it worth it, darling?
It certainly is.
It certainly is. So we're back in marmalade making mode. This one and this one are both at a similar stage. This one I am going to pop there for a tick and then lift that up, let that one strain. And this, I think, is a really important stage. So just get off any of the shreds of marmalade. We want to squeeze as much of the, hang on, before we start, because we're going to get in a sticky mess. We want to squeeze as much liquid out of our muslin. But you will also notice that like the top of my muslin bag is just really liquid because it's been in there. But as I squeeze, we're going to get a jelly-like consistency coming out. And this, as I just said, is a really important stage. It's going to probably take 5 to 10 minutes. And if you're making a lot of marmalade, it can make your hands a bit sore. You want to squeeze and twist and get as much of that pectin out as you possibly can. And you'll have, I don't know if you can see at the moment, it's quite liquidy still, but in a minute you'll see there's sort of this jelly-like consistency that comes out. So take your time, don't rush it, and just squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Now you don't throw your muslin away. Throw away the content, can go on the compost heap, but discard the content, whichever way you want to do it. I actually reuse a piece of string as well. And then wash out your muslin, hang it out to dry, and you can use it time and time again. These muslins I've been using for many years, and they're baby muslins, and I find that they actually work better and last longer, and they're pretty inexpensive. I think I got them back in the day in somewhere like Mothercare, if it was, or it was actually, I think it was John Lewis's. So they last, might be slightly discoloured, but well used and well loved. So I don't know if you can see this sort of jelly-like. You just want to keep squeezing, literally 10 minutes. And we're only on 2 minutes something or other at the moment. So, you want to get it all out because that is what's going to make your marmalade's flavour really good and setting point, because this is where all of the pectin is stored. So I'm just going to hang here, get this all out, and when I've done that, I'll be back with you. Now that is all squeezed out. You can see that I have squeezed pretty hard out of that one, and I will discard it and wash that out later. But it's now time to add the sugar. It's an obscene amount of sugar. It's 2.5 kilos of sugar. And I just use granulated sugar, just regular sugar. You don't need to go to the expense of fancy sugars at all. Add in your sugar. I've got the rest here in the bowl. I have got quite a lot of liquid in there, so I know that looks like a huge amount. I will bring you up close so you can see. How does this camera work? I think I have to duck down. That is it. And what is really important is that you put this on a very, very gentle heat until the sugar has completely dissolved in. If you increase the heat too quickly and the sugar hasn't fully dissolved in, it will burn and it will ruin. We certainly don't want that. So I'm going to bring this over to the agar onto the cooler side, and it's probably going to take a good 5 minutes. Don't rush it. And I have a long handle wooden spoon for the job, and just stir that sugar through and have a little patience. I'm going to bring you closer up so you can see exactly what's happening. So just a gentle heat and just stir until all of that sugar has completely dissolved in, and you're really confident that it has, otherwise it will ruin, and you don't want it to ruin at this stage because that's just too much. So patience is key here. Now when you're confident that the sugar has completely dissolved in, increase the heat. Now this agar runs quite hot, so I have to be careful that it doesn't boil over. So I'm not going to pop it on the centre, because if I do, it will boil over quite quickly. Agars tend to have a hot spot, and because this is a dual control electric, it keeps its temperature really, really well. Unlike my last agar, it would struggle to get to boiling point and maintain that for a long period of time. And this is going to be boiling for about anywhere between 20 and 45 minutes approximately. You get to setting point, and I haven't worked out why there's such a variation. It just depends, and I can see it turn. I can see when it's ready. I think that is from years of marmalade making, and I make anywhere between 8 and 12 batches of marmalade each year, so that's quite a lot, sometimes even a little bit more. So I find cooking is very much about touch, sight and smell. Those three are really kind of key in cookery, and really using your senses and looking at it and looking for that change in consistency. So I'm going to bring this to the boil and then let it bubble away but not overflow until we've got to setting point, and I'll show you exactly how we do it, how we do the wrinkle test. Now I'm going to put, as this is coming up to the boil, 2 plates into the freezer for my set tests. I can get away with 1, but I'm going to say to you, put 2 in, because if you're unsure, you might need to use that second plate. You can always take it out, but it's great if it's already in the freezer, ready to go. So I'm going to do that right now. So we're coming into a good rolling boil now. Now at this stage, I don't want to walk away. I'm not going to leave this room until this is at setting point, unless I take it off the heat. You do need to keep an eye on it. It could easily boil over if you're not careful, and I will move it slightly around the ring as to how high it's getting. So never double the recipe either, because you'll end up in a really, really sticky mess. This is as much as I can do in a large agar pan. and you just don't want it to boil over because you will end up in all sorts of trouble. And I have made so many jars of marmalade. I'm happy that the dogs are down by my feet because I'm not going to leave this, and just keep a really, really close eye on it. The furthest I'll go is sort of the sink and there, and I will get to the sweet spot where I know that it's not going to boil over. At the moment it's quite hot and it could get quite high, but probably in the next 10 minutes time I can get it to the exact spot where I think it will be okay and I can be relatively confident in it. But this is the sort of thing, if you've got small children, do it when they are either at nursery, childminder, or in the evening and they're asleep and you've got somebody else around, because you don't want to leave this at this stage. And if you take it off the heat, you've then got to pop it back on the heat, and it's just a bit of a faff. So you don't want to have distractions, I think is basically what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way. I do ramble on, don't I? But anyway, this is a really good boil, and as I said, I'm going to keep a close eye. Lots of people have said if you put the wooden spoon over the top, it stops it from boiling over. It doesn't work. Maybe it does with pasta, but I don't think it does. I've tried it numerous times and it's not great, and I don't want to have marmalade all over my alga because that will be a sticky mess. Next week I'm going to be sharing with you how I clean my alga. I had lots of requests for that. I need to clean that lid, it's horrid, and I've been saving it to share with you how I clean it. So that is coming for you next week, if you're interested. And actually I think a lot of what I'll be sharing is relevant for other ovens as well, so it's not just Alga Pacific, just keeping them clean in between cooking and what have you, but there'll be useful tips for everybody. I'm going to keep a close eye on this, and I'll be back with you when I think we're almost at setting point. This is beginning to look like it's nearly ready. So let's do our first set test. Carefully, don't burn yourself. Spoon out a small amount and place it on one side of your plate, and then pop your plate back in the freezer for about 30 seconds, and I'll be back with you to show you whether it's set. I don't think it's quite there yet. I think it probably needs another 7 or 8 minutes. It's my guess. So I've just taken it out of the freezer. I'm going to run my finger, and it's just beginning to wrinkle, but not quite enough. So I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes, and we'll do our next set test then. But this is the sort of colour and look that you're wanting to get to, and then when you're at this point you're like, yeah, let's start doing set tests. So I'm going to pop my plate back in the freezer so it's ready, and then when I do my next set test I'll do it over here. 5 minutes later, and let's have another see. I think might need a few more minutes, but I'm going to pop my plate back in the freezer and know that it's that side, so I shall put the plate around a certain way and we will see. We're very close to it being ready. Right, let's see how we are doing. It's wrinkling a little bit more. I think we are 2 minutes off, so I'm going to do one more test, but we are so nearly there. So I'm thinking that this is going to be my final test. I like the way it comes off the spoon. Back into the freezer and we'll see. Right, let's see if we're done. Yes, I like that wrinkle. I like how that is, and that has been bubbling for another minute and a bit, probably by the time I faffed around. So I'm going to take this off the heat. Off the heat. Close the lid, and this is when I put my jam jars in to be sterilised, and in they go. I always put more jam jars in than I actually need because it's just better to have more than less. This I am going to leave to sit for 20 minutes, and I'm going to set a timer. You can just about see there's a little bit of scurf on the top. that should, while it's sitting, just disappear. If it hasn't, then you can use a spoon or something and spoon that out. But I like to let it sit before jarring it. So I'm going to get everything ready, everything prepped for the next stage and for jarring. I am a creature of habit, relatively set in my ways. I like using a ladle and a jam funnel. Other people prefer using a jug. It's personal preference. It's what you're used to and whatever you find the easiest way to do it. But that's how I enjoy doing it and how I've got used to doing it and it works for me. So I leave it at that. But I'll be back with you in about 20 minutes time. We are all prepped and ready. The marmalade has sat for about 20 minutes. I don't know if you can see in there. I don't want to tip it out. I'll show you. And my jam jars are sterilised and ready to be filled. I haven't got to grips quite with this camera yet. There we are. There you can see into my pan there. And now I need the camera to come back to me. There we are. That's better. Right, jam funnel. I just like using it and it's what I've got used to. Now you have to be very careful. It is hot. It can burn. So, you know, be careful. I've got oven gloves and I have got tea towels at the ready and I've got my lids here waiting to be put on once the jars are filled. So I'm going to just give it a little stir. Again, this is something that you don't want to get distracted. You can see the heat coming out and that has sat for 20 minutes. So, you know, it's very, very, very hot and we've got hot jars. So please be careful. And then just carefully fill up your jars. I like to fill my jars really quite full, right up to the top. Even a little bit more. Suddenly the weather has changed, the sun has come out. I just heard the cockerel crowing and it's much nicer than it was about an hour ago. Literally had sort of wind and rain just going across out there, blowing a hoolie. But I'm going to just fill up my jars swiftly, concentrate on what I'm doing, and then I'll be back with you when we're ready to pop the lids on. I filled my jars. I've got a little bit left over, but not enough to fill another jar. So I've just got a ramekin here. Or do I say that? I might fill one of those small ones. That might just be enough. Let's give it a go. Yeah, there is just enough, and actually a tiny weeny bit more, so that won't go to waste. Pop that over there and then Simon can have this on his toast or croissant weekend treat marmalade. There we are done. So I'll put that in there, that in there, and then I have dripped a bit there, but we'll leave that for the moment. Then I'm going to use this tea towel. Pop your lid on, make sure that you've got a thread, and I'm actually going to pop this tea towel, because my surfaces aren't heat proof. I need to pop my jars of marmalade somewhere to cool, but be really, really, really careful. Screw your lid on tightly and then leave it to cool on one side, and then label your jars and make sure you pop the date on. If you're new to my channel, do hit the subscribe button. I have a video on a Tuesday and a vlog on a Friday. And for those of you that have been here for a while, thank you for tuning in again, and looking forward to seeing you on Friday with this week's vlog. And in the meantime, have a really, really lovely week.